It's a good question, a simple question. But the answer isn't simple. It's not a yes or a no. It's more complicated than that. He didn't just hear a song one day and think, that's it, I'm done with movies. It wasn't a single moment, it was a slow burn, it was 1,000 little cuts. A death by 1,000 paper-thin movie scripts. But this one song, this one recording session, it was different. It was a flash of light in a very dark room. It was a sign. Maybe it wasn't the thing that made him realize it was over. But it was maybe the moment he realized what he was missing. It was a perfect snapshot of the problem. It showed him the artist he still was, trapped inside the movie star he had become. And it showed him how the machine he was in couldn't even recognize that artist anymore. To get it, you have to understand where he was in 1968. He was lost. Not financially. He was one of the highest paid actors in the world. He was living in a gilded cage. But creatively, he was in a desert. The 60s had started with Promise, GI Blues, in Blue Hawaii. These were huge hits. The movies were fun. The soundtrack sold millions. The formula worked. So his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, did what any good carnival barker would do. He found a winning formula and he beat it to death. He ran it into the ground until there was nothing left but dust. The movies got cheaper. The scripts got lazier. The songs got worse. Much worse. Think about it. This is the man who sang Heartbreak Hotel. The man who changed music forever. Now, he was singing about being a clam bake, he was singing about yoga, he was surrounded by dancing girls in terrible costumes on cardboard sets. He knew it was bad, he hated it. He would complain to his friends, the guys he kept around him. He'd get a new script and just shake his head. He knew the songs were trash. Sometimes he would get physically ill before a recording session for a soundtrack. He was a thoroughbred racehorse being forced to give pony rides at a county fair. And he was getting tired. The fire was going out. You could see it in his eyes in those mid-60s movies. He looked bored, he looked bloated, he looked sad, the world had moved on too. While he was making Harum Scarum, the Beatles were making Rubber Soul. While he was singing about being a beach boy in paradise, Hawaiian style, Bob Dylan was going electric, and the Rolling Stones were finding their swagger. The world was on fire with change, with protest, with psychedelia, with soul music and funk. And he was stuck in Hollywood singing lullabies to farm animals. He was becoming irrelevant. A joke. A relic. And he was not even 35 years old, so that's the scene. Total creative bankruptcy. He's at a low point. And then comes a script for a new movie. It's called Live a Little, Love a Little. It was supposed to be a little different. A bit more adult. A bit more sophisticated. He played a photographer with 2 apartments and 2 demanding girlfriends. It was a step up from playing a race car driver or a water skiing instructor. A very small step. But it was something, and for this movie he needed to record some songs. It was March 1968. He went into the studio in Hollywood. The usual soundtrack sessions were quick, lazy affairs. Get in, get it done, get out. The songs were so bad, why bother putting in any real effort? But this session had something different. A new song from a writer named Mac Davis, who would later have his own hits. The song was co-written by Billy Strange, who had worked with Nancy Sinatra. The song wasn't a ballad, it wasn't a goofy novelty tune, it was tough, it was lean. It had a funky, insistent bass line, it had sharp, jabbing horns. The lyrics weren't about moonbeams or blue lagoons. They were demanding, they were about action, they were about cutting through the nonsense. It was a command, not a request. And something happened to him in the studio that day. The musicians there, some of the best session players in the business, they felt it. He wasn't just going through the motions, he was on, he was engaged, he was leading the band. He was pushing them. The song had a bite to it, and he bit back. His voice. It wasn't the soft croon from the movie ballads, it was sharp, it was percussive, he was snarling. He was spitting the words out. There was an energy and aggression that had been missing for years. It was the sound of the kid who sang Hound Dog. It was the sound of the man who had something to prove. For those few minutes in the studio, he wasn't a movie star. He was a singer. A real one. He did take after take, trying to get it perfect. He cared. That was the most important part. He actually cared about the music again. He had created something genuinely good. Something contemporary. Something that could have actually been on the radio in 1968 next to James Brown or Wilson Pickett. It was funky. It was cool. It was a little dangerous. It was everything his movies were not. And what happened to this great, energetic, powerful recording? The machine took over. The machine didn't know what to do with it. It was too good. It was too different. It didn't fit the formula. First, they put it in the movie. But how? Was it a major performance piece? Show, stopping number, where he could unleash that energy on screen? No. It was just background music for a party scene. He's there, he's sort of singing it, but it's muted. It's throwaway. It's wallpaper. All that power, all that fire from the recording studio was reduced to forgettable party chatter. It was a lion's roar used as a doorbell chime. Imagine pouring your heart into a painting and then watching someone use it as a placemat. That's what they did to his performance. Then they released it as a single. This was its chance. Maybe the public would get it, maybe radio would play it, but the single was a total flop. It barely made a dent in the charts. It peaked at number 69. For him, that was a catastrophe. His singles used to be automatic number ones. The machine had sabotaged it from the start. It was the B-side to a song called Almost in Love, a sleepy, forgettable ballad that was much more in line with the terrible movie music he'd been forced to make. They took his piece of rock and soul dynamite and they buried it on the back of a marshmallow. So think about that. He finally breaks through his own apathy. He connects with a piece of music. He gives a stunning, powerful performance, one of his best of the entire decade. He creates a record that is tough, modern, and exciting. And what is his reward? The movie buries it. The record label buries it. The public never even gets a real chance to hear it. It dies a quick, quiet death. This had to be more than just another disappointment. This was a confirmation of his worst fears. It proved that even when he did good work, the system he was in was designed to produce mediocrity. The Colonel's formula was so rigid that there was no room for genuine artistry. It wasn't about making great records anymore, it was about fulfilling a movie contract. It was about selling a soundtrack album no matter how bad it was. The music was just a product, a souvenir from the cheap movie you just saw. This song wasn't the cause of the end, it was a symptom of the disease. It was the moment the patient, who already felt sick, got the lab results back and saw, in black and white, just how bad things really were. He must have felt completely powerless. He had poured his soul into that recording, and it meant nothing to the people in charge of his career. It was just another can of beans on the assembly line. It's what happened next that tells the real story. The failure of this song, the soul-crushing experience of the whole movie machine, lit a different kind of fire under him. It was the fire of desperation. He knew he had to get out. He couldn't make another movie like Clambake. He couldn't sing another song about shrimp. He had to do something real, or the artist inside of him was going to die for good. Just a few months later, he was supposed to film a TV special. The Colonel's plan was, of course, terrible. He wanted him to sing a bunch of Christmas carols. A nice, safe, boring holiday special. It would have been the final nail in the coffin of his credibility. But for the first time in a long time, he said no. He put his foot down. He had a new vision, fueled by the frustration of experiences like the one with this song. He wanted to do a real rock and roll show. He brought in a young, ambitious director who saw the fire still burning in him. They talked about music, they listened to records, they remembered who he used to be. The result was the '68 comeback special. He walked out on that stage in a suit of black leather. He was thin, he was hungry, he was dangerous again. He sneered, he sweated. He sang with a passion and a fury that no one had seen in almost a decade. He wasn't the silly movie actor anymore. He was the king of rock and roll, and he was taking his throne back. He was reclaiming his legacy, and the energy he brought to that special, the raw, powerful, almost violent vocal performance. It was the same energy he had found in the studio a few months earlier for that one failed single. That song was the rehearsal, it was the spark, it was the proof of concept that he still had it. Its failure was the final push he needed to break the whole system, to bet on himself, and to walk out on that stage and remind the world who he was. So, in a way, the song didn't make him realize his movie career was over. It made him realize his real career had to begin again. It was the darkness right before the dawn. The story has a strange and beautiful ending, too. The song was forgotten for decades. It was a deep cut for hardcore fans only. A footnote in a long career. The movies ended, he went back to touring, he became the Las Vegas icon, and then he was gone. 30 years passed, the world changed again, a new century began. And a Dutch DJ, a guy who went by the name Junkie the 40th, was asked to remix a song for a Nike commercial for the World Cup. He was a fan, he dug through the archives, and he found it. He found that forgotten single from 1968. He heard what was buried in there. He heard the power in the voice. He heard the funk in the bass. He stripped away some of the old-fashioned production, put a new driving beat behind it, and turned it loose on the world. And the world went crazy for it. The song that had died at number 69 on the charts in 1968 became a global #1 hit in 2002. It was everywhere. It was bigger than it ever could have been back then. A whole new generation of people who only knew him as a bloated caricature in a white jumpsuit suddenly heard him for what he was, a powerhouse vocalist with incredible rhythm and soul. It was the ultimate vindication. It proved that he was right all along. He had recorded a classic. He had been ahead of his time. The machine had failed him, but the music itself, the pure performance he gave on that day in March 1968, was timeless. It just needed the world to catch up. So no, it wasn't the end, it was the sound of a new beginning he hadn't quite started yet. It was the rumble of an earthquake before the ground splits open. It was a moment of pure, raw talent that the world wasn't ready for. Not yet. The song was a little less conversation.